Ever since I was a kid, I've loved Old Forge. It's a hamlet in Herkimer County, within the town of Webb, New York State's largest town in terms of land. Fulton Lakes weave through the area, surrounded by Adirondack forests. The town welcomes visitors and is a starting point for countless adventures. And in this video, I'm going to try and sum up its full story. Old Forge lies on top of a geological uplift that began forming millions of years ago. Over time, heat, pressure, and tectonic forces shaped the rocks into mountains and valleys. The Laurentide ice sheet later covered the region, carving basins and smoothing the terrain over thousands of years. After it melted, small bands of Paleo-Indians moved into the region, relying on hunting and foraging. Generations later, the Haudenosaunee established longhouse communities and traveled the lakes in birch bark canoes. Today, the Northern Forest Canoe Trail follows some of these ancestral routes. In the 1600s, the arrival of Europeans and the pursuit of beaver furs set off competition and warfare across the region. Conflicts changed the balance of power around the Northeast, but by the 1780s, the Adirondacks were still a rugged and unsettled wilderness. In 1791, Herkimer County was created, bringing official government to a region that was still mostly frontier. The very next year, wealthy New York merchant Alexander Macomb bought over 2 million acres in northern New York in what became known as Macomb's Purchase. Within a few years, Rhode Island entrepreneur John Brown purchased over 200,000 acres of this land, including the future site of Old Forge. On Brown's tract, he imagined homes, farmland, and industry taking root. He had a wagon road built from Remsen, providing early access to the remote land. In addition, on the middle branch of the Moose River, Brown built a dam and mills, creating water power and enlarging the Fulton Chain Lakes for easier travel. Life on the tract proved difficult, and settlers abandoned the area by 1803. John Brown also died that year, leaving the project incomplete. A few years later, his daughter Sarah and son-in-law Charles arrived, attempting to revive things. They brought sheep, built a large manor, and opened the area's first iron forge. Ultimately, their ventures in sheep and iron failed under the harsh Adirondack conditions, and Charles committing suicide in 1819 marked the end of an era. The deserted forge became a reference point, eventually giving the settlement its name. 2 decades later, a man named Otis Arnold, along with his wife Amy and 12 kids, brought life back into the abandoned manor and surrounding area. Needing help in the wilderness, they relied on local woodsmen, part of a new generation of guides who began leading adventurers through the Adirondacks. These guides carried travelers all over the place, and just keep in mind there was no GPS back then. By this time, the region remained largely wild. Robert Fulton had surveyed the surrounding waterways for a potential canal back in 1811, but nothing came of it. However, soon the state would rely on the area for the massive Erie Canal to the south. They would raise Brown's original dam to help provide water for it, creating a reservoir and further shaping the Fulton chain of lakes. These steady waterways encouraged lumbering, with logs floating down the Moose River to reach distant markets. At the same time, Emmett Marks, the godfather of Adirondack fishermen, brought the first trout eggs to the area. In 1892, Dr. William Seward Webb oversaw the completion of the Mohawk and Malone Railroad, linking Old Forge to the Mohawk Valley and St. Lawrence River. The railroad opened the wilderness to visitors, creating an escape for city slickers, and wealthy families began building elaborate great camps along the nearby lakes. Tourism was growing, and by the late 1800s, the father of American forestry, Franklin Huff, and others helped establish the Adirondack Park, protecting vast forests and lakes under a Forever Wild clause. In step with these conservation efforts, the Browns Tract Guide Association represented guides, while the Adirondack League Club set aside large areas for wilderness protection. By the early 1900s, Old Forge was growing as a gateway to the wilderness. Abenaki natives, such as Chief Jules Dennis and his family, spent summers along the lakes, while pioneers such as George and Jenny Goodsell helped build the community. Supporting life along the lakes, Old Forge's mailboat service, which has run continuously since 1901, carried letters, while a pickle boat delivered groceries to isolated camps at places like Inlet. And on top of all that, you have buggies moving regularly between Old Forge, Eagle Bay, Big Moose, and Thendara. Moses Asher Cohen opened Old Forge Hardware in the basement of the Forge House Hotel, and it quickly became a key business in the growing hamlet. In 1903, Old Forge officially became a village, but high administrative costs led residents to later dissolve it. As the community adjusted, children eagerly gathered to see Ernie Flanders deliver ice, and they called him the Pied Piper. By the 1920s, automobiles had entered the scene. The first cars were delivered by train, but the eventual construction of Route 28 further connected Old Forge to the wider region. The Great Depression and World War II slowed tourism down, but post-war recovery and a local airport ushered in a new era of recreation. By the 1950s, Old Forge Hardware had expanded, and the Enchanted Forest of the Adirondacks opened its doors, as well as Macaulay Mountain Ski Area. Increasing winter recreation and community investment in trails set the stage for the hamlet's rise as the quote-unquote snowmobile capital of the East. As the community embraced all-season activities, Old Forge became the starting point for the 90-mile Adirondack Canoe Classic around the 1980s. Meanwhile, Enchanted Forest expanded into water safari, and the Town of Webb Historical Association was organized. By the 21st century, Old Forge further strengthened its role in outdoor recreation as the starting point of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, the country's longest water trail. And that's basically how we got to right now. The town still thrives on year-round outdoor activities. Visitors enjoy the lakes, trails, and mountains just as they always have. Every season brings new adventures and ways to enjoy the outdoors. And that's just one of the reasons why I love this place and why I've been coming here my whole life. Have a good one.